2:33 in the afternoon. August the 16th, 1977. A boxy orange and white ambulance, unit number 6, comes screaming up the winding driveway of a Memphis mansion, led by a car that met it halfway. Inside that ambulance are 2 Memphis firemen. The driver is 38 years old, heavy-set, dark mustache. His partner in the passenger seat is 26. They have run this route before, plenty of times, because fans are always fainting at the front gates of this house in the heat. The older one even came here 2 years ago when the owner's father had a heart attack. So as they pull up to the white columns of Graceland, one of them is thinking it might be the old man again. It is not the old man. A bodyguard rushes them upstairs, past a dozen frightened people, into a bathroom, and onto the floor of that bathroom is a body. And here's the thing that both of these trained professionals will swear to their captain within the hour, the thing they will be quietly told to never repeat. When they look down at the swollen blue-black face on that cold tile floor, neither one of them recognized the most famous man on the planet. In fact, they went further than that. They said the dead man was not Elvis Presley at all. They were ordered to keep that to themselves, and for years, that is exactly what they did. If you want to know what those 2 paramedics saw on the floor of that bathroom, and why one of them went back 90 minutes later and found something that did not make sense, hit subscribe and stay with me. Because once you hear how this call really went, the official story of Elvis Presley's death starts to fall apart in your hands. To understand why these 2 men matter, you have to understand how ordinary this call looked at first. The Memphis Fire Department's engine house number 29 sat 3 miles up the road from Graceland. Calls from the mansion came in all the time. A fan would lock her knees in the August sun outside the gates and go down. A tourist would get clipped by a car on the boulevard. Routine. The men who worked that house could have driven to Graceland in their sleep. So when the call came in at 2:33 in the afternoon, road manager Joe Esposito on the line saying someone at the house was having trouble breathing, nobody panicked. Charlie Crosby and Ulysses Jones Jr. jumped into the ambulance, hit the siren, and headed south. Crosby was driving. Jones was riding. They had both been through the training, and between them, they had years on the job. They had seen overdoses, heart attacks, car wrecks. They were not the kind of men who rattled easily. But the moment they cleared the top of that driveway, the call stopped being routine. A car was waiting to lead them in, which never happened for a fainting fan. There were people everywhere, frantic, pointing them inside and up the stairs. And the doctor, Elvis's own personal physician, was already on the floor of the bathroom performing CPR before they even got their bags through the door. That detail matters more than it sounds, because CPR is what you do when you already believe there is no heartbeat and no breath. The doctor was not treating someone who was sick. He was working on someone he already feared was gone. And what the 2 paramedics saw when they knelt down beside him told them the same story in an instant. The body was on its back on the tile. The pajama bottoms were pulled down around the knees, the top open, and the skin was wrong. Dark blue, almost black, in cold, heavy folds. The younger paramedic, Jones, dropped to his knees and checked for any sign of life. There was none. The flesh was cold. This had not just happened. This had happened hours ago, and the body had been lying here long enough to tell that story on its own. Crosby, the older one, would later describe it plainly. There was no response. From the beginning, he said, it looked bad. They assisted the doctor with CPR anyway, because that is the job. You work the patient even when the patient is past working, and then they loaded him onto the stretcher and ran him down to the ambulance. But here's the detail that 2 trained EMTs could not get past. The detail they carried out of that house and straight to their captain. They did not recognize him. This was the most photographed face of the 20th century. The man whose image hung on bedroom walls in 40 countries, and two professionals who lived 3 miles from his house for years looked down at him and could not place him. The face was too swollen, too discolored, too far gone from the man on the album covers. So they said the only thing that made sense to them at the time, that is not Elvis. And then they were told, gently and firmly, to keep that opinion to themselves. If a story this strange is already making you question what you were told about the king's death, take 1 second to subscribe and turn the notifications on. Because what Jones noticed in that bathroom, and what he discovered when he came back, is where this stops being a sad story and starts being a suspicious one. While Crosby was managing the move to the ambulance, his partner Jones was taking in the rest of the room. And a bathroom, it turns out, is a terrible place to keep a secret. Jones saw pills scattered around. He saw what looked like a doctor's bag on the counter, the compartments packed with little packets and various items. And on the floor, right next to the body, he saw 2 syringes. Not the small disposable kind most people picture. The older metal type that holds a glass ampule of medication. They were lying there on the tile beside the most famous man in the world. Now, on its own, you could explain that away. The personal physician was present. A doctor's bag and a syringe near a doctor are not a crime. But hold on to what Jones saw, because the timeline is about to do something very strange. Jones rode the body to Baptist Hospital, a trip of under 7 minutes. Roughly 20 minutes after they arrived, Elvis was officially pronounced dead. And then, about 90 minutes after he had first knelt on that bathroom floor, Ulysses Jones went back to the Graceland bathroom, and what he found stopped him cold. The room was clean, the pills were gone, the mess he had stepped through was gone. To Jones, it was obvious that in the time he had been at the hospital, someone had gone through that bathroom and removed every trace of medication. And a separate investigator who showed up later that afternoon found almost nothing either. An empty doctor's bag, no medications anywhere. The pills 2 professionals had seen with their own eyes had simply vanished. You do not clean a heart attack, you clean a story. The natural question is the loudest one. Why would anyone tell 2 trained paramedics to stay silent about what they saw? Eventually, Crosby and Jones were given permission to share the bare details of their run. Picture it. Firefighters and reporters crowded around tables to hear the little they were allowed to say, while a radio in the background played Elvis songs. The men gave the safe version, the drive up, the CPR, the 7 minutes to the hospital. No response. They did not lead with the part where they could not identify the body or the vanishing pills. Those parts came out slowly, over years, in pieces, the way buried things always do. And the people closest to the king were busy shaping a very different account. The official story settled into something clean and grief-shaped, a beloved star, a sudden heart attack, a nation in mourning. The version with the scrubbed bathroom and the syringes on the tile, and the 2 professionals who said it is not him, that version was not for public consumption. But why? Why protect a simple heart attack? Why move that fast to clear a room before an investigator could see it? Why warn 2 firemen to swallow what they witnessed? The answer the family would have given is mercy, the desire to protect a daughter, and a legacy from the ugliness of how the king really went. The answer the skeptics give is darker, and it has never fully gone away. The body went down the driveway in the back of unit number 6, and the questions stayed behind in that house, and they have been multiplying ever since. Why did 2 trained EMTs, men who lived in the shadow of that mansion, fail to recognize the most recognizable face alive? Why were there loose pills and old metal syringes on the floor beside him? Why was that room spotless 90 minutes later? Why did a separate investigator find an empty medical bag and nothing else? Why were the men who carried him out told to keep the strangest parts to themselves? And why, decades on, do the people who stood in that bathroom still describe a scene that does not match the heart attack the world was handed? None of it, by itself, proves a conspiracy. The discoloration of the body can be explained by how long he had been down before anyone found him. The swelling can be explained by his final years, the prescriptions, the collapse of his health. A doctor's bag belongs to a doctor, and a grieving family. Cleaning a room is not the same as a cover-up. Every single piece has an innocent answer if you want one. But the paramedics are the part that will not sit still, because they had no reason to lie. They were not chasing a book deal in that first hour. They were two working men, 3 miles from home, who looked at a body, did their job, and told their captain the truth as they saw it. The body did not look like Elvis. The room was full of pills, and then the room was empty. They were the first outside eyes in that house, and they were told to close them. What they carried out of Graceland that afternoon was not really the king the world remembered. The man on the magazine covers, lean and electric and impossible to forget, had been gone for a long time before that bathroom floor. What 2 firemen knelt beside was what was left after the medication and the isolation and the weight of being the most famous person alive had quietly hollowed him out. They did not recognize him because there was no longer much of him to recognize. The official cause of death has been argued over for almost 50 years. The full autopsy from that day was sealed by the family, locked away from the public until 2027. When it finally opens, it may confirm the heart attack, or it may line up uncomfortably well with what 2 paramedics saw on the floor and were told to forget. Until then, the most honest witnesses to the king's last afternoon remain the 2 men nobody thought to listen to. The ones who drove up that driveway expecting a fainting fan and drove away carrying the end of an era. If this story has you wondering how much of the official account was real, subscribe and turn on notifications. The sealed file opens in 2027, and when it does, the men who carried Elvis out of Graceland may finally be proven right. Stay curious, stay relentless, and keep asking the questions they tried to leave on that bathroom floor.